In the 1990s and early 2000s, it was quite rare for anime to make it outside of Japan without first receiving extensive alterations. Whether it was the removal of blood and drugs, or in some cases, the skipping of entire story arcs, censorship in anime was commonplace. Of course, the vast majority of those watching these anime were children who had no concept of censorship, so those who complained about differences between the Japanese and English versions were in the minority. However, now that uncensored versions of these shows are a Google search away, the censorship has become blatantly obvious, leading to the dubs of certain anime becoming somewhat infamous, chief among these being One Piece and Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, pretty much everyone knows that One Piece eventually got a second English dub with fewer edits, but what if I told you that Yu-Gi-Oh! Also received a second English dub? That's right, 4Kids Entertainment teamed up with Funimation in 2004 to create Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut, a completely uncensored and, for the most part, non-localized version of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the most well-known examples of censorship in anime. I'd even go so far as to call it the poster child for censored anime. So with that in mind, how come practically no one has even heard of Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut? Well, as you might have guessed, it was never completed. The first 2 volumes were released in October 2004, and a 3rd volume followed in February 2005. But that's it. With only 3 volumes ever released, each containing 3 episodes, we only got a baffling total of 9 episodes. So why was it discontinued so early on? It's a bit of a mystery, but one thing we do know for sure is that it was not cancelled for lack of demand. In fact, Al Khan, the CEO of 4Kids, stated in an interview with Anime News Network that Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut, as well as Shaman King Uncut, were quote, extraordinarily successful. This was in April of 2005, approximately 2 months after the final volume of Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut was released. There were more volumes slated for release later that same year. One of them already had a cover image and a trailer, but both were delayed until eventually they were cancelled. So if the demand was there, and the sales were good, why was the release cancelled? A few rumors have persisted over the years, all of which stem from statements made by 4Kids and Funimation. The first is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut competed with the regular home video release of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion, this is the least likely. The CEO of 4Kids did say in the aforementioned Anime News Network interview that the delay was done in order to avoid competing with the cut version. But even that doesn't make any sense. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was in its 4th season at the time, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut was coming out very slowly. If the uncut and cut dubs were competing with one another, why was it delayed rather than cancelled right away? I believe that the real reason for Volume 3's delay has something to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters, as it was delayed from December 2004 to February 2005, which is around the same time Capsule Monsters went into production. Check out my video on Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters for more information on that. Volume 4 was also delayed, but that was most likely for the same reason that it was cancelled, which we'll get to in a minute. The second rumor is that there were licensing issues with the Japanese audio. This one came directly from Funimation's marketing director. It's possible that the Japanese audio was causing legal problems, but the Funimation representative only stated that there were problems with legal rights. No details were provided, so it could really be anything. The third and final rumor is that 4Kids and Funimation had a falling out. On May 11, 2005, Funimation was acquired by Navar Corporation for just over $100 million. Ironically, on the same day, 4Kids announced a 38% drop in net income in the first quarter of 2005 compared to the first quarter of 2004, citing Yu-Gi-Oh!'s decline in popularity as a major contributing factor. Not long after, the 2 uncut series were silently discontinued, despite the fact that multiple volumes for both had already been announced. Then, in October 2005, the director of 4Kids' home entertainment department was asked via email why it was cancelled, and he simply stated that they were not profitable. However, the same guy claimed in a press release for the 3rd volumes of both Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut and Shaman King Uncut that the releases, quote, demonstrated a strong appeal and have been proven sellers, which is a clear contradiction. Personally, I believe it was a licensing issue with the Japanese audio because 4Kids uploaded a few episodes of the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Onto YouTube in 2009, but then a couple months later, they had to remove them for rights issues in Japan, which they confirmed themselves. And 4Kids continued to collaborate with Funimation on other projects, such as Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's home release, so I don't believe the Navar acquisition caused any trouble. Now what about the dub? Was Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut actually good? Now that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is available to everyone in Japanese, is there any reason to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut? All of those questions and more will be answered, but first I need to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark. Not only is Surfshark perfect for protecting your online privacy, it also allows you to expand your Netflix library. If you're a fan of anime like me, you're missing out on tons of Japanese exclusive anime. With Surfshark VPN, all you have to do is sign into Netflix, launch the Surfshark app, and change your perceived location to Japan. Now you can watch all new episodes of Spy Family, Chainsaw Man, Bleach, and so much more. Another great thing about Surfshark is that it can be used on an unlimited number of devices. This means that you can share it with your family and friends. And thanks to Surfshark's add-on security combo, you can keep your device virus-free. Additionally, with Surfshark Alert, you can monitor your personal data by receiving real-time alerts. If you're ready to secure your online presence, click the link at the top of the description below and use code Enigma to get 85% off the regular price, plus an extra 3 months for free. Surfshark also provides a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose.
Is he f***ing awesome?
Now back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut. Originally, I had planned to tell you all about the differences and what Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut does better than the cut version and the original Japanese version. But after watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut, I revisited the Japanese version and realized that they're almost exactly the same. Don't get me wrong, I love the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh! But some of the changes made by 4Kids in the cut version were actually good. For example, in the cut version, Yami does the narration at the beginning of each episode. The narrator in the uncut version is someone else. They were attempting to be more in line with the Japanese version because the Japanese narrator did not have Yami's voice. But in my opinion, Dan Green's narration was way better. And it wasn't even Yami doing the narration. It was the same actor, but if you pay attention to what is being said and the way the narrator speaks, it's clearly not Yami. There is also a weird inconsistency with the translation and the lack of localization. All of the characters keep their English names, except for some reason, they all have Japanese last names. Why do this? All it did was make me confused. Either use the English names or use the Japanese names. Mixing them is just weird. Some of Yugi's iconic lines were removed as well, such as "Destroy the moon!" and "Exodia! Obliterate!" Even though they're memed a lot, I doubt anybody would have complained if they made it in. They also decided not to translate any of the on-screen text. It's a good thing that the characters and the cards had English names. This is an example of localization that is good, but why didn't they translate any of the text on screen? They must have thought that it would provide a more authentic experience, but it's supposed to be an English version, so at the very least, it should be in English. In the end, I believe they dropped the ball on this one. Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut was marketed as an unedited version of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I suppose it kept that promise, but that's exactly the issue. It wasn't edited thoroughly enough. They simply translated everything directly and then redubbed it. And given that the Japanese version with subtitles was on the same disc, what was the point of this release? If the dub was truly cancelled due to financial constraints and their goal was to bring an unedited version of Yu-Gi-Oh! To the West, why didn't they simply subtitle and release the Japanese version? This would have been more cost effective and it would have prevented the uncut release from competing with the cut version, though I don't really think that's why it was cancelled. And if Yu-Gi-Oh! Uncut was cancelled due to licensing issues with the Japanese audio, as I suspect, the dub would have been cancelled due to a redundant feature of the release. At least we have the Japanese version now. It became available outside of Japan for the first time in 2015. But there will always be those who refuse to use subtitles, and the English dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! Will always be a completely different show. On a more positive note, something amazing happened while I was working on this video.
Yugi.
Kaiba!
It's fun to watch you playing. By the way, do you have the Blue Eyes White Dragon card in your bag by any chance?
Dan Green announced on Twitter that he and Eric Stewart are considering making a Season 0 dub of the manga to honor Kazuki Takahashi. I figured I should throw it at the end of this video because it's somewhat related, and I want this to happen, so I want to get as many eyes on the project as possible. Go follow Dan Green on Twitter at DanGreenVoices. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.